Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning into another Supatease video. 10.1 got a huge update. If you missed that, I'll have the video linked at the end of this one, but I wanted to update my PvP tier list in correlation with that because I think there are going to be some changes, some specializations shifting down, most of them going down, I think, and maybe a couple of them shifting up in terms of power and potential for PvP overall. And if you want to stay up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, patch note videos, tier lists, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Blood Death Knights, you're getting a bit of a damage buff, probably still going to be bottom of the barrel. Frost Death Knights, you guys didn't get touched at all. You still got a pretty strong kind of cleave one shot. Do we put you on D or C? I don't think you're as bad as the tank specs, but again, maybe the tank specs just shouldn't even be ranked. Some of them should be ranked. Some of them should be ranked. I'll probably leave the tank specs at the bottom here, maybe move this around a little bit. Unholy Death Knight, you guys are really not getting anything either. Probably a very similar boat to Frost in that sense. I was really surprised to not see any buffs for these classes. Havoc Demon Hunter, I think, could be one of the best melee DPS. Debatably the best melee DPS here now for 10.1 with all of the nerfs that have come through towards a bunch of the other classes and specializations, most notably Subtlety Rogue, because rogues were really preventing Demon Hunters from just taking over everything. I think Demon Hunter is going to be likely really good moving forward after these changes. Vengeance Demon Hunter, we're just going to leave that to later. Boomkin, this is a hot one. Is going to be S tier, A tier, B tier. The Starfall build is pretty much gone. You're probably not going to play that anymore. Golden Fang nerf is a nerf to the single target build. Might still see mushrooms come back into play. I've been playing them already prematurely, and it's been okay. The fact that it's okay now, it's probably still going to be decently strong. So I'm giving it an A tier ranking, not S. Cyclones are going to be a little bit slower casted with the nerf to it. And I think your damage is probably going to be lower than a couple of other ranged DPS that I think are really starting to shine at this point. Feral Druid, not too much changed for you, but you're already in a pretty good position. A lot of the caster DPS that were preventing you from succeeding got nerfed. Things like Destro and things like Demonology got nerfed. So I think you're probably still in a really good position. I want to say like A, maybe bordering S. At this point for 10.1. Guardian Druid, we'll wait till the end. Resto Druid, this one, because a bunch of other healers got nerfed on their mana regen, Mistweaver, Disc Priest, these are kind of the most notable ones, you became a lot stronger. A lot of players are debating whether or not Resto Druid is going to be the best healer here now for 10.1. I'm not 100% sold on that, at least in things like Solo Shuffle. I think your mana is probably still worse than those healers, but you're definitely a lot better. I think you're probably going to beat every Disc Priest in Solo Shuffle lobby now. Because it was already a pretty even matchup, and now you're likely going to get really far ahead. I'm going to put Resto Druid on A tier right now. This is honestly a conservative placing because it could be S. Devastation Evoker, definitely an underrated specialization. I think it's been doing better and better. Rogues have been keeping you down. So the Subtlety Rogue nerfs, it's possible that you could kind of crawl your way back up the ladder a bit here. I think you're actually better than Death Knight specializations. I think you've got a couple Wizard Cleave options that you can go into. I'd say it's probably about middle of the pack. You can definitely make it succeed, but it's still a little bit of a coin flip class. Preservation Evoker, I think that this is likely going to be S tier. It's getting some damage buffs to it. The nerfs to the mana regen on other healers is a buff to you. It's a really sleeper class. I don't know why it's the least represented healer. It's actually a ton of fun and really powerful. I'm really confused why it's like only like 7% of the ladder currently, or maybe even less than that. Because it is absolutely a beast when you can start weaving in Living Flames for damage and these deep breath sweeps. It's a really strong healer. Beast Mastery Hunter, getting a 5% damage buff. I think once Beast Mastery Hunters get their set bonuses unlocked, they're also going to be a lot stronger than they currently are. And with nerfs to a whole bunch of the other classes that were keeping you down, you're probably in a much more solid position, I think. So I'm putting you on A tier. I think previously you were B or C. I think you're probably going to be in a lot better position. Survival Hunter, same type of deal as Beastmaster. I think with the nerfs to everything else, you're going to be a little bit more viable. I think Jungle Cleave specifically. The only thing I want to preface this is I kind of want to put you on B tier because I think Solo Shuffle can be hard. I'm thinking about Solo Shuffle and 3v3 mostly for this tier list, like the 3v3 type of battle group. I think Solo Shuffle can be hard for you. You don't really synergize with a lot of other classes, but you're definitely still strong. Maybe B is fair. B might be fair. I think BM's probably better with how much damage it's get. You got like a 5% damage buff, and the set bonuses when they come out, it's going to be insane. Marksmanship Hunter, you got a significant damage buff to a lot of your abilities, but you're still glass cannon. You're still really squishy. I think previously I had you on like D or C. I want to say you're probably B. Like you're going to do a truck ton of damage. Maybe that puts you up to A. So this is one that could shift a little bit. You might be A or B. I don't think you're going to be S because you're too squishy to be S. And we have to kind of wait and see how the numbers play out for whether or not you'll be A tier or B tier, but you're definitely a lot better. You can't be worse with the buffs that you got. Arcane Mage, probably middle of the pack still. I think that if you're a skilled Arcane Mage, you can make it work. Similar to all the other tier classes in this tier, but there's nothing really notable to me for Arcane standing out as like this remarkable, powerful specialization at the moment. It's just a well-rounded competitive spec, but you're probably going to feel a little bit inferior at times. And things like Feral Deer can be really difficult to deal with. Things like Beast Mastery Hunter can also be really difficult to deal with, and those specs are probably going to be pretty strong. Fire Mage, you're a little bit squishier in this patch. But I don't really think that's going to matter too much for you. If anything, it's the mana nerfs to the Healer Discipline Priest that you were playing with things like Rogue Mage and the nerfs to Rogues that I think is a bigger nerf to you. But your damage is probably the highest of any caster now. With the nerfs to the Starfall build to Boomkin and Destro Locks, I think you might have the highest damage. So do I put you on A tier or S tier? This is a really hard one. This is a really hard one because if Rogue is kind of like a coin flip, if Rogue is still alive after these nerfs, Fire Mage is probably the best spec in the game because you're just gonna play Rogue Mage and absolutely destroy everybody. So I'm giving this a bit of a higher ranking than maybe it's. I want to say it's somewhere here. It's somewhere here for sure. I'm leaving it here for now. Frost Mage, probably still middle of the pack. I don't see this being like super remarkable. You're really good into melee DPS, and honestly, melee DPS got better in this patch. But in wizard lobbies and stuff like that, you're just completely, out to sea. You're not gonna have a chance there. So it comes more middle of the pack for me personally, in an overall ranking. For Mistweaver Monk, I think that if you just change your build to Mastery Gear, you get your set bonuses, that your healing output is still going to be absolutely out of this world. Your mana regen's probably still going to be decent. I don't know if I want to say you're S tier. Just from what I've seen from other Mistweavers, I think that it's still probably going to be viable, but I don't think you're going to be like Omega God mode like you were previously for sure. Brewmaster Monk, this class actually got a lot of buffs, which is surprisingly why I'm going to give it a ranking. I think that Brewmaster might be a little bit back. It's almost kind of a bit troll how much damage it got buffed, but you might see a little bit of play for it now. Windwalker Monk, you're getting Whirling Dragon Punch buffed, possibly going to be introducing that into the build. Curious to see what that does for the class, because that could just suddenly make you like really viable or just like totally useless. So very interesting for you as a Windwalker. I want to put you somewhere between B and A. For overall power. Maybe I'm leaning more towards A, but the main problem for you again is like Marksman. You're just really squishy. Your damage is also pretty predictable with Serenity, so if this Whirling Dragon Punch doesn't do anything, you're probably B. But if the Whirling Dragon Punch build ends up being really good, I think you'll probably be A. And again, this is kind of like an estimate with the changes moving forward, so maybe it's better to put you down here just because it's similar to Marksman in that sense. You get really big bursts, but you're kind of squishy. Holy Paladin, you're probably still not going to see play. Really hoping the 10.1.5 rework hits the nail on the head here for you, because I don't think it's good to have healing specializations feel like Holy Paladin. Lol, we're not inviting that. Like healers are already low representation in solo shuffle and stuff like that. To get more healers to queue, you can't have some healing specs just being KW Holy Paladin. We're not inviting it. You can't have that. That it needs to change. Prop Paladin, we'll leave that till the end. Rep Paladin, definitely better with all the nerfs to the casters. I think that you're probably A. You're way more durable than the classes in the B tier, and you do comparable damage to the classes in the A, if not, very close. And nerfs to Warlocks and things like that is definitely a buff to you. So I think A tier for Rep Paladin is going to be a fair place. Discipline Priest, I think you're probably going to fall off pretty hard. I'm honestly a little bit worried about queuing mine. The nerfs to Power with Shield, I don't think are going to shift you into any sort of like damage dealing atonement build. It's just going to make you bad because they didn't buff the damage. So I really think you're probably just going to be bad. You're going to have lower powered shield healing, lower mana regen, and really tough to squeeze damage in. So I probably want to say B tier for Disc Priest. It's going to be rough. Now, are you going to be worse than Holy Priest? Now, the problem with Holy Priest is you have no damage reduction cooldowns, which is really important when you're staggering how much burst is available in the game. You can go into Angel Form Immune Crowd Control for a little bit, get a nice decent amount of healing. You got a really big healing buff, but with no damage reduction cooldown, you're really going to have a hard time. So I actually do think it's probably worse than Discipline Priest, even with the nerfs of Discipline Priest. Just with 2 charges of Pain Sup and Barrier, you're still going to get a lot farther than Holy Priest in a lot of your matches. So putting it a little bit lower here. Shadow Priest. Now, this is the class that I do think is legitimately on the S tier. Is really hard to kill, incredibly hard to kill. Damage output is going to be absolutely astronomical if you're able to get your casts off. Void Torrent sucking haste away with Mind Trauma. Like Shadow Priest is going to be a beast in this patch now. After the nerfs to the other casters, I think that it already was starting to pop up a bit as like a counter to rogues and stuff like that. I think Shadow is going to be really scary here in this most recent hotfix round. Assassination Rogue, 5% damage buff. It's not nothing. You're probably still squishy. Which is why I think you're probably still on the B tier. We should try and keep the melee and the ranged together as much as possible because you really shouldn't compare melee and ranged cross against each other. Just melee to melee and range to range is a better idea. You're probably still B tier. I've seen a couple of Assassination Rogues, mostly in 2s, and they seem pretty decent. Like, honestly, into Boomkin specifically, it seems like it's really powerful. Maybe we'll see more Assassination Rogues with the Subtlety Rogue nerfs just to try and see if it's working or not. Main problem, again, I think is squishiness. The main reason you play Subtlety Rogue is because it's 2 vanishes, the cooldown reduction, and it just makes it really tough to kill it. So you just stay alive forever until you get a one-shot, whereas Assassin, you can die, which is the main difference. Outlaw Rogue, really surprised to not see you get any buffs. I want to put you down here, honestly. With Holy Paladin, like you literally just don't even exist in the game. Like I'd never see a single one ever. I can't feel like it's better than or equal to DK. I do see Holy Priests. I guess I see Holy Paladins as well, very rarely. Most of the time they're losing. But I can't in good faith put Outlaw Rogue any higher than this. It's just I'd never see it at all. Subtlety Rogue, hit or miss. This thing is still S tier possibly or F. I'm going to be straight up with you. The nerfs are either hard enough that it can't 100-0 somebody in a stun, which means it's garbage and no one's going to play it because that's all it can do. Or it can still 100-0 people in a stun, or it'll be relying on its teammate like the Fire Mage to do it. And if the Fire Mage can still do it, then it'll probably still be strong. So I actually think I'm going to be putting it still in A tier. I think that because it's tankier than all these other classes, it played in the right hands with vanish and cooldown reduction and stuff like that, in the amount of crowd control that it has, I think that it could still get carried in the damage department by something like a Fire Mage, for sure. So like Rogue Mage will still likely be a viable option for it. Maybe not so much things like Enhancement. We saw a lot of Enhancement subtlety, but Enhancement's burst went down, so maybe a little bit less of that. But I'm leaning more to the side that it'll probably be strong just because it can set up and get carried in damage department by other classes. Ellie Shaman, with the nerfs to all the other casters, it's also kind of a nerf to you because you were like one of the number one pairings for those casters. So I want to say you're probably A tier, maybe S tier, maybe. It really depends. Honestly, if Holy Paladin gets stronger, you go down. Your stonks go down because AoE Dispel Flame Shock is just really dumb as an Ellie. But with the representation of Holy Paladin being really low, I think Ellie is actually probably still in a really decent position. Enhancement Shaman, your sustained damage is kind of getting shifted away from your burst. I think you're probably still going to be an S tier class, even with the changes that went through for you. I think like Turbo Cleave is going to be nasty. Specifically turbo, probably maybe only turbo for you, but your damage output is still probably going to be very higher than a lot of other things. Good survivability, nice disruption for incoming crowd control, and that type of deal. And I think you're like a Shadow Priest muncher when you've got like Warrior on your team and stuff like that. So, and you're pretty good into Demon Hunter Boomkin and things like that. I think you're probably still going to be S tier. Restoration Shaman, nerfs to the mana. I think you're probably better than Disc. I don't know if you're better than Mistweaver. Maybe I should do I really think Mistweaver is an A tier still, or Resto Druid is an A tier? This is kind of the big shit. I think you're probably still in the same spot because I put you on A tier in the previous listing for this patch. You're probably still going to stay in the same position. Mistweaver is going to feel a little bit more closely matched. And Resto Druid, it depends on the lobby. If you get a wizard lobby, you're going to smash the Druid. If you get a melee lobby, Druid is probably going to beat you. So it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors matchup there for you there. Affliction long, Unstable Affliction Dispel is getting buffed, but that's not enough to make you viable. Your damage is still going to be really high, decent survivability, but I don't see this spec coming back. I really feel like DKs and Affliction need like some kind of unique thing brought to them to make them a little bit more competitively viable. I don't see it happening. Maybe in 10.1.5 when they buff all of your damage. But again, you got to hit some crazy threshold of damage buffs to make Affliction good, I think. And I don't think that's going to be hit in this patch or a recent hotfix. Demonology Warlock, I think you're a lot worse. 5% reduction on your MS is a lot, and you lost quite a bit of damage. So I don't think that you're going to be S tier. You're probably A tier now. Still have a ton of crowd control. Tyrant is still going to be a really big threat, but definitely taken down a peg. Destruction Warlock, really big nerfs to your Shadow Burn. Is the most notable one for this one, and a big nerf to your kind of like the passive damage that came in this patch. I can't remember the name of it. I think your overall damage is going to be much lower, but your dimensional rifts are going to still be very scary. So this is a tough one for me if I want to say that it's still S or A. It's also really tanky. I think it's tankier than Affliction, or tankier than Ellie, tankier than Boomkin. Probably not tankier than Demonology. But you're really good. You can synergize with so many different things that I think it's really tough for me to not say that it's probably still S tier. But it could come down to A. But I still think you're going to be. You were like above and beyond everything else in the last patch, or before these hotfixes. So I think you're probably still up there. Arms Warrior, you got a pretty significant damage buff. I think something like Turbo Cleave is going to be really good for you. I want to put you on like A or S. This is really tough for me to say. I think I'll leave you on A for now, but it's really close for me to want to put you on S. Fury Warrior, I think that you're also going to be really strong in this patch. Probably going to be slapping you on the A tier. You can see there's a lot of A tier specializations. I think you're a lot more durable than the B tier, and your MS stacking is really powerful. When you're able to get it going, it's really powerful. And this new Onslaught build is absolutely destroying people. As far as these tank specs go, I think most of them are unranked, and then prop paladins are prop paladins. They always just kind of end up here. I don't think that the buffs to these other tank specs are going to matter. It's not as big or influential as the Brewmaster. So let's just talk about the final kind of ranking here that I've got. I think Destro, because of how strong it was for this patch, is probably still S tier. Demon Hunter somehow dodged nerfs, is the highest damage class in the game. Shadow Priest is probably like overtaking or getting close to these other wizards in the top rank since the nerfs that are coming through for them. And Enhancement Shaman Sustain is probably still going to be really, really strong, even though their spike damage is going down. So things like Turbo are going to be really gnarly. BM Hunters and things like Jungle getting better with the nerfs of the casters. These guys, most of them can blast out really good damage, but they're kind of squishy. And I think the kind of squishy part is what's holding them back comparatively to these other specializations. Ellie is also kind of squishy. But Ellie's damage output is like remarkably higher, I think, than these classes overall. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. These guys just have nothing special about them. This guy could be more viable, Brewmaster. And then these guys are just like Keck W, lol, we're not inviting you when you sign up in LFG. So they're kind of just down here. Hopefully something happens for you guys. Other than that, this is my video. Remember, things could move. I got some shifting movement for Destro between S and A. Whether or not Shadow Priest takes the Destro spot, as like best caster or something like that. And Subtlety Rogue as well. Like it could either be S or it could be D, depending on where it sits. But I think Fire Mage Rogue will still be able to execute kills. It's not like Sub Rogue Crowd Control got nerfed. It was just the damage. So it might still be able to be carried in comps like Rogue Mage. Other than that, thank you very much for... Oh, I guess the other one was Resto Druid. Do we think Resto Druid is S tier since the mana nerfs? This is probably a more conservative estimate to say that these guys are going to feel a lot more evenly matched, and Priest might be falling off a lot with the mana nerfs, and Holy Priest and Paladin, for their reasons, are still going to be struggling at the bottom. But I think Evoker is just doing so much damage, and it's going to be a monster healer in those compositions. But Resto Druid Turbo could be really scary as well. So Resto Druid could move between A or S as well. This is being made before we've really got to play it. This is like an estimate based off where they were previously and the buffs coming in for them and what I've been seeing in terms of their trajectory. So again, a bit more of an estimate. But other than that, I just wanted to give you guys something to think about in terms of the strengths and specializations for when you're selecting them here for Patch 10.1. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.